some of what she said
This meeting is
really
being recorded.
is really worth hearing. Um, I want to tell you a bit about the proposal that we've made for 24 units in Cutchogue on the south side of Route 48 on a very heavily wooded parcel. But I think, before I get into some of the details of that, I should explain some of what you need to know in order to analyze an affordable housing development. The word affordable, which is a synonym with workforce or a lot of other words, some people call it attainable. But, if you think about it, if you can afford $1 million house, that's affordable. So the word is definitely not a synonym with low income. It's simply what works at your income level with your salary. So I thought we might start by just explaining a term that gets bandied about a lot, and it's area median income. And if you've paid attention at all to various presentations about affordable housing or workforce housing, you've heard the term. And this median is a concept, in statistics, which is a midpoint, and it's not an average. And the reason it's preferred to an average is so that it doesn't blend the numbers. It's like all the numbers of every single income in Southold town is on a scale, and the median is the exact midpoint. And the reason that's helpful to know is it doesn't blend anything, and it gives us a cluster around a middle, which tells us where the greatest need is related to various income levels. And we, as the Housing Advisory Commission set up a long time ago, the idea that area median income would be the measure, and that we would essentially indicate what level of median income we were serving. Okay, I hope I have you so far. And it's a naughty concept, and it's sort of jargonish in a way, but you're going to hear it over and over again, so you might as well know what it is. So the median income that we have to use as a measure is the Nassau-Suffolk median income. And that income for a family of four, the absolute midpoint is $129,900. And so when we say that we are going to serve people at 60% of the area median income, it's 60% of 129,900,000. Interestingly enough, there are also numbers which show us what the median income in Southold town is, and that is 87,600. And we're talking 2021, 2022 numbers. So 87,600 is about in the 90 percentiles of the Nassau-Suffolk income. So when we say we're serving 60% of the area median income, we're serving really 100% of the Southold income, median income, if that makes sense. There's that complete disconnect, really, between our census district, which is Nassau-Suffolk, which is what we're measured against, and the income levels in Southold. And you can ask me questions, about that afterwards. But a lot of this information is in the comprehensive plan in the housing chapter, which is chapter 8. And interestingly, the need for affordable housing at our median incomes, at 100% of our median income here in Southold, is for rental housing, and Southold has only about 10% rental housing of all the housing units, and that is a really tiny amount of housing. And as you know, almost everything is a private home. And for many people, their housing is renting a room in a private home, renting a private home, sometimes seasonally, where they have to move out in May and move back in September, and sometimes living in substandard conditions. I don't know if any of you remember a few years ago, we had like a little small scandal that the arcade store in Greenport that was vacant already several years ago. And the people who owned it were renting closet space to people to live in. So the people who aren't in the recognized 10% of housing that we have, rental housing that we have, are living in substandard conditions. They're living anywhere that will keep them out of the elements. People are living in families' basements, and somebody, I've been on the Housing Advisory Commission, and I stepped off in 2019, but I was since 2004, so I know the history of the cottages and all of that, and have watched all of this happen. But somebody who worked in Greenport Village at the time was telling me a story whereby she and her husband lived in her parents' basement, and her father passed away and her mother was remarrying, and they said goodbye. She was working for Greenport Village, but she didn't have any place to live anymore because she had literally no alternatives. It isn't sometimes even a matter of cost, it's a matter of availability. We don't have rental housing here. And we basically have a pattern of single family homes. And it's why you hear this chatter about accessory units. And the idea is that on one parcel of land, we have one family living. Sometimes it might even be one person living. And we just can't afford to spend our land in that way. We have to have more people accommodated on the land, particularly if we're going to be preserving so much land, which is something that I think we really want to do. We want Southold to be different, but we also want to have diversity within Southold's borders. And we don't want to have people living in unsafe conditions. We haven't had any scandalous fire, thank God, or flood in the basement or anything. But if we did, it would be these houses where sometimes one family lives in a room and they share the one bathroom and the one kitchen, multiple families in one private home, and they live there secretly, and it's not recorded by anyone, but it is patently unsafe. And it is really sad that we who are affluent, really, we're an affluent town, and yet we're allowing people to live in such an unsafe situation because we don't want to really look this problem in the eye. It's not a happy problem. It's a serious problem. Being on the Housing Advisory Commission and being involved with housing for so long, the hotel in the middle of Greenport, American Beach. Well, it was sort of a lovely front page article in the Suffolk Times when they were expanding their rooms onto the second floor because they were doing so well. And it was a wonderful thing for them, except that all of that second floor had apartments. There were about 6 apartments up there. And the people who lived there, most of whom were elderly, had lived there for a long, long time, more than 20 years in most cases. And there was nowhere, they came to the town and there was nowhere, nowhere, nowhere that we could get them housing in the town. And these are people without cars, without real money to maneuver, to move, to pay deposits and all that. And they're just gone. They had to leave the town, but they don't really have the wherewithal necessarily to leave in a way that's life supportive. So, I mean, that's how I got passionate over the years. There's like 100 stories of people who, we walk past in the IGA, who we see all the time, who we recognize because they live in our town, and we can't offer them anything. So I feel passionate about this project, but I also feel passionate about it because it's a really good project. We thought a lot about this parcel. It's zoned agricultural, zoned AC, and AC allows residential development, which many people apparently don't know. And when I was bidding on this property, I was bidding against a market rate developer who wanted to build three large homes on the property. And so that's significant. That's the other side of the coin if we didn't buy this property and if we aren't able to build on it. But we think we should be for many reasons that I'll share with you. And one is that we or myself and my joint venture partner, who is David Gallo of Georgica Green Ventures, a very, very experienced developer who has won many awards and is well thought of. He has never worked in a venue in a town, and he's worked from Roslyn to Hempstead to East Hampton and Southampton. He's just closed on a property that East Hampton asked him to do after he had done another successful project there. Same as in Southampton. He's done two developments in Southampton. So he is sought after because he and I have a mind meld about the need and the standard that we want to build to. We want to build something that will be around for a very, very long time to come. This should be affordable, guaranteed for the next 50 years. It means that people's children can grow up there if they choose to, or maybe they can save some of the money now that they're paying less for rent and put it aside to down payment. You know, as an aside, at the cottages at Mattituck, which are 24 cottages, 8 of those have turned over the last 15 years. And that means that 8 more families get affordable housing. And all of the people who moved out of there were able to move into market rate housing because there was a control over how much they had to pay for rent. Plus, they had the security of permanent rent and safe housing that's well maintained. So that covers sort of affordability. I wanted to discuss location with you because I think that's something that I've been asked about and I think might interest you. Because people always ask, why didn't you build this in a halo zone or a hamlet center? Because it would really be nice if it were walkable. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm a smart growth person. I really believe in building in walkable communities. And I'm sorry that we couldn't do that. But the reason that we couldn't is that, first of all, we needed to build the maximum, which is 24 units. And we needed to build the maximum because one of the first costs going in is $1 million for wastewater treatment. So the wastewater treatment plant that we're going to install is going to cost us $1 million up front. So we needed those 24 units in order to divide that by 24 and make the number work in terms of how much it costs us to develop each unit of housing. And then on the other hand, in the hamlet centers, there really isn't the acreage to get those 24 units on land, and also the cost of the land is higher. So this parcel was appealing originally because of the price, and the price is a function of the location. And also, it's not in a neighborhood that might scare people about their home values. And I take that very seriously. I mean, people's homes are probably their most important financial nest egg, and I respect that they worry about them and want to protect them. Except, in Mattituck, when we had a huge outpouring of anti-affordable housing sentiment. People said Mattituck was going to go to the dogs, etc. Well, 15 years later, we can look at it and say it's just another part of Mattituck, and Mattituck prices have risen just like all the prices in every other hamlet. So being in the hamlet center definitely would be desirable, but we can't bring that to you. We can't deliver it. So it's one of the things that we feel disappointed that we can't deliver it, but we think we are delivering a good place. This is a heavily wooded area, and we are going to build this with prefab units so that we will not have to clear cut the site. We will leave as many trees as possible on the site. We would take down not one tree if we could do it. Of course, we can't achieve that, but we don't want to damage the trees that we have that are mature trees on this spot. And I can talk to you about other things. I thought also water is an issue, natural resources. So if you want me to talk about that, but I feel like I'm talking so much that I should really let you ask me questions, because you might have questions about some of this, and I can circle back to natural resources if you want me to.
Okay, thank you,
Cool.
Rona.
Your turn.
Thank you. And no doubt there will be questions for you. I will look forward to those. But first, we're going to hear from Michael Daly. Michael, I know you're out there. I've lost you on my screen.
I am.
You're out there.
I could jump up and down.
There you are. Okay.
I'm here.
Go right ahead.
I'm somewhere on there. So thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be with you. I've been watching the discussions and reading and talking to people around what's happening in Southold and Mattituck for quite some time. My name is Michael Daly. I do live in Sag Harbor, and I'm the founder of East End YIMBY. And I founded East End YIMBY about 5 years ago after having been in real estate at that time for 18 years and really being on the front lines and seeing more and more people being left out of the housing thought and the way that housing is being developed on the East End. And, so many of these luxury developments, 15,000 square foot homes can be built as of right without any special exceptions needed or any political decisions being made by town and village boards. But try to build 15,000 square feet of community housing. And you know what? You're in a fight, and you're in a fight for your life. And that made me wonder, why is that? So I attended an affordable housing advocacy training on Cape Cod, which arguably is really very similar to us in terms of being a long piece of land on the end of a state, surrounded by water. And I started learning from them, came back and founded East End YIMBY. And here at East End YIMBY, I'm going to read to you a little bit about us quickly. Our mission is to do the research, to identify solutions, and educate local East End of Long Island residents about the complex issues surrounding the discussion on community housing. Case in point, Rona, thank you so much. Just talking about median income and the different types of incomes and what's 80% on Long Island versus 80% in Southold, it's enough to make your head spin and just say, you know what, I can't be bothered with it. But so our job is to do the research and to try to make it as easily understandable as possible to people who know that we need more community housing, want to see more community housing, but don't know how to advocate for it in an effective way. We also believe that every township, all of the 5 East End townships, all of the 11 villages in the 5 East End townships, and all of the 43 hamlets on the East End of Long Island, each must do their part to provide affordable community housing for local residents. And despite the affordable housing myths, the truth is that providing adequate workforce, senior, and affordable rentals and helping people to own their own homes helps create sustainable communities and protects our East End heritage and culture as a whole. So thank you to Patricia for speaking earlier, and thanks so much to Rona for speaking. And Rona, I've got to tell you, getting Dave Gallo as your partner in this is probably one of the most brilliant moves you've made, because Dave is a highly respected, highly regarded developer of community housing here on the East End. As a matter of fact, there were people that fought tooth and nail, I mean, screaming like nobody's business about this, about Sandy Hollow, the 28 units that Dave and the Southampton Housing Authority built on Sandy Hollow Road. And when it was done, one of the major objectors to this said, "Oh boy, that's pretty nice. If I knew it was going to be that nice, I would have had them build more." You know, and of course, you know, all you can do is shake your head after that. But this fellow, you know, fought that for 5 years. So I'm going to share with you just a little bit of the education that we provide for people that come to our East End YIMBY meetings. We do workshops, we hold meetings, we speak at town and village meetings, we speak at CACs. I've been going to CACs around the East End for at least 3 years. And what I ask a CAC is, why would you want to wait for the town or somebody else to kind of drop a community housing development on you? I'd like to invite you to think about getting in front of it and ask yourself the questions: what kind of housing do the members of our community need? Is it accessory apartments? Is it accessory cottages? Perhaps there are people in our community who want to have 2-family houses. Maybe we need duplexes, quadplexes. Maybe we need a couple of small apartment complexes. Maybe we need some larger apartment complexes. We are advocating for everything from accessory apartments all the way up to large apartment complexes. We're advocating right now for 104 unit community development in the hamlet of Cutchogue, which just happens to have a 17-acre site on it that is really perfect for this. But I don't have to tell you what's happening. People are coming out of the woodwork. How can you do that? Oh, we understand that we need community housing on the East End, but what does a NIMBY say? Just don't put it here. Put it somewhere else. Put it, it's too big, you know, and the classic kind of fearful, fear-based NIMBYism. But we find that a lot of NIMBYism comes as a result of believing in the myths around affordable community housing. And I'm going to tell you quickly what those myths are. Number one, affordable housing isn't for local people. Well, the truth is that when you do get state or county or federal funding, you do have to open it to more than local people. But the reality is that those developments that are being done on the East End are being lived in by at least 90% of local people. And very often, most of the other 10% are people who may not have a local zip code right now, but used to live here and wanted to come back and be with family and friends or come back for a job. I have somebody that works with me right now who lived in Sag Harbor for 13 years. House got sold out from under her and her partner, and now they live in Manorville, and they trek back and forth from Manorville to Sag Harbor and to East Hampton every day. So in the town of Southampton, there are over 1,600 names on the registry for community housing, and many of them have been on that list for years. And 90% of them are local residents, with most of the remaining 10% former residents who wish to return. Myth number two, affordable community housing hurts the environment. As I've said before, you can build a 15,000 square foot home on the ocean without having to go through seeker and positive declarations and things like that. Community housing goes through the same stringent environmental reviews, just like single family housing, and is held to strict standards for groundwater quality and environmental impact. The development of innovative alternative septic systems, wastewater treatment developments, and green building, something that Dave Gallo uses in his developments, has come a really long way, and affordable community housing does not hurt the environment any more than single family homes. Affordable housing, myth number 3, drives down property values. Well, all I can tell you is that their repeated research shows that affordable housing has no negative impact on home prices or on the speed or frequency of sale of neighboring homes. Case in point, look at the cottages at Mattituck. Look at how successful that has been for the community. Why wouldn't you want to have 10 communities like the Houses of Mattituck within your area to provide that type of housing for local community members, for firefighters, for nurses, for essential workers, for downsizers? In my business right now, I work with mature adults all the time who say to me, Michael, you know, I would like to sell my house. The house is a little big. The kids have moved away. My spouse passed on, but I can't, there's no place for me to go. If I sell this house, then I can't stay here and be near my friends or my remaining family. This is my roots. So there are people who are not selling their homes because they don't have apartments to move into. Myth number 4, affordable housing looks cheap and undesirable. I'll just remind you of the story that I told you 5 minutes ago of the gentleman that said, oh, if I knew that they were going to be this nice, I would have, supported them building more. It's just not true. We're not driving over the Whitestone Bridge and looking at Co-op City and all of that. That's not the way that community housing gets done in our area, because we understand that that's not appropriate for our area. We don't want to build that type of density. We don't want to build that type of construction. We want to build the type of construction that Dave Gallo did at Sandy Hollow in Southampton. Please come take a look at it. Or if it's more convenient, go to see Spionk Commons in Spionk. They're terrific, and they fit into our communities very, very well. Myth number 5, affordable housing hurts the quality of local schools. And the reality is that the opposite is actually true. Without affordable housing, many families become trapped in this cycle of rising rents and have to move frequently to find living spaces that they can afford. And that means that their children are not able to stay in the same school for long, resulting in lower test scores on standardized tests. When a child has a stable home and can remain in a single school system, their test scores rise. It also means that children are able to build long-term relationships with peers, teachers, and it increases their performance at school.
Michael,
Myth number 6.
Michael, I want to
Yes,
interrupt just real quickly. We do want to get to discussion and question and answer. So if you could just move.
I will. I'm on 6. I'm on 6 and I've got 7. So
okay.
Just these last 2, affordable housing is a burden on taxpayers and municipalities. It's not true. Housing developments, whether they're affordable or not, pay taxes. And then affordable housing is just another government handout. And the reality is some local community members impacted by a lack of affordable community housing include employers, employees, low-income level, entry-level workers. And those people not only pay their taxes as the developments do, but they also pay into the local community businesses, which provides taxes to local communities. So let's educate ourselves as to not the myths, but to the realities of affordable housing and community housing, and let's provide the type of housing that our community members need. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, Rona and Pat, all very interesting and important context for us to go forward with, not just in this discussion. I'm going to check the chat to see if we have any questions at this point. Let me pose something in the meantime, and that is, do we have a sense of how many people in Southold Town would qualify for this sort of affordable housing? Do we have a number?
Well,
Question.
I can tell you that the housing registry, which the commission is charged with maintaining, we have in excess of 400, but those are unqualified names. These are people who have expressed interest in being notified when a project becomes available. What we did back in, I think it was 2020, we sent out a letter to all the names on that commission, on that registry, asking them, has your situation changed? Do you still want to be on the registry? And we were able to update it, and we cleaned up some of the older inquiries that were on the registry that have since either moved out of the area, moved on, or just no longer interested. So, and we probably will do that update again in probably 2023, when one of the projects, probably the first one that's coming online, is the project in Greenport. That's 40 rental units over medical offices on the corner of 25 and sort of by the blinking light there in Greenport. So we'll be doing an update again. We'll be getting the word out that there's probably going to be a lottery selection process taking place as a result of that project coming online.
Thank you, Pat. Here we have a question from Victoria, and I'll read it. It's from Mr. Daly. In Southampton, how has the trend toward Airbnb/home away investors buying housing stock, how has that affected the availability of affordable housing in recent years? And I suppose the same is also true for Southold Town. Same question.
It's been nothing short of disastrous. The truth be told, and again, because if we leave everything to the free market, and if we don't do anything to protect our local community members, it's very natural, it's human nature for people to go where they're going to get the most money. So if people can make more money by renting their house by weekend or by week than renting it to a local community member, you know, how many people are not going to choose to do that? So we believe that there needs to be some legislation in place to protect a certain number of year-round rentals in every community, and every municipality will decide how to do that for themselves the best way. But Airbnb has been disastrous in a community that was already very, very tough because of seasonal rentals.
Thank you, Michael. Rona and Pat, I see you nodding your heads in agreement.
I just wanted to add to that it's part of the insecurity of people. Most of the rental housing is sort of upon the whim of a landlord. So it's not just Airbnb issues, it's also issues like somebody who's rented a house for a while and suddenly the person sees the prices going through the roof for houses and they decide to sell their house, and the family that's been living there is out of luck, even though they think of it as their permanent home. So all of this creates one of the reasons the government first gave tax benefits to home ownership is that permanent housing is known to stabilize a community. And so that's what this would do. The people who are in and out of houses are not living a stable life. And so it has the power giving people stable homes has the power to make people better parts of a community, to cure some social ills, perhaps, you know. But one thing I want to point out, because in the beginning, Pat listed all of the housing developments, workforce housing developments that have been proposed. And I noted the numbers of each of them. So altogether, all 6 of those come to 114 units. That is so few. And every single one of them will attract a furor of upset. Altogether, it's 114 units, and none of us feel that we compete with each other. I want all of them to get built. I'm not pushing mine versus someone else's. I don't feel that kind of ownership of it. I'm trying to create housing. Yes, John, sorry.
We've got three questions lined up here. I'll start with Glennis Ferries, who asked, what about housing for homeless or lower income? What about encouraging home ownership? Should a nonprofit be part of the solution? Who'd like to take that?
Sure.
Can I answer that?
Absolutely. Take the
Hi,
first.
I'm Cheryl O'Mara. I'm on the Housing Advisory Commission with Pat Lutzky, and Rona was on. We're very supportive of her project. There recently in Newsday, there was another article on this in part 2 in January for people who are looking for home ownership. And I believe we had them, Pat, at the event that we had 2 years ago, Long Island Housing Partnership. Though they can be looked up, and they're all about people who are looking for home ownership and help to do that. So that was, I think, one of our vendors when we had our consortium or whatever it was that we had that at Peconic Landing a couple of years ago. They're still out there. So if you know, you can pass the word on them.
If I may also add, and Rona, I'm going to ask you, this is more up your knowledge base than mine. There are several agencies, government and private agencies that are addressing low-income housing needs. There's very few that are addressing the AMI that serves our workforce in Southold. Rona, this is more up your alley, so I'm going to defer this to you.
Well, it's sort of interesting because the little history on this. Before, when the cottages at Mattituck were first proposed, and they are ownership situations, those cottages are owned by the people who live there. And whenever any development is proposed, the housing registry numbers grow exponentially because people see a possibility and they want to get on that list. So the list grew enormously when those cottages were proposed and when they were approved. And as we got to the finish line and, everybody was interviewed and everybody's finances were looked at, those people, most of those people, I would say at least 75% of those people could not get mortgages. They had student loans, they had credit card debt. And in the end, we only had 49 people, 49 families in the lottery. So that led to my determination to know that rental housing is a beginning. A high percentage of people pay more than 50% of their income for housing right now. The guidelines for rent limits are 30%, no more than 30% of income. That 20% is possible to go into savings. And so it's possible for a young couple to move into an apartment in an affordable housing development and save money and move out and move into the marketplace. There will be dips in housing prices. I can predict that, and I know I'll be right. That's what you learn if you live long enough.
Thank you,
Could
Lisa.
may I give a quick response to that?
Sure, then
Response
we'll
to
go
that
to
as well.
Lisa. Then we'll go to
Sure.
Lisa.
You have my
Yeah,
permission.
the only type of housing we don't need more of right now is single family homes. And we don't need more Luxo boxes replacing local cottages and homes and ranch homes and things like that. But the problem is that that's the only housing that is built as of right in almost every municipality on the East End. So the free market is going to constantly take advantage of that and build single family, bigger, better, more expensive single family homes. And every community housing, even 2-family homes, for God's sakes, 2-family, 3-family, small apartments, large apartments, all have to go through special exception and require local government arbitrary approval, which politicizes them. And that's why they're not being built, is because, and if only NIMBY show up at these public hearings, and if the elected officials only hear from the people who don't support it, then they leave thinking that that's what the public wants. And it's not what the public wants. It's what some of the public wants. But so, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Lisa, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Lisa, and thank you, Rona, for inviting me to the meeting. I am a nurse. I have a young child with autism. I'm practically a single mother, so I consider myself in the marginalized group. But one thing I want to bring to your attention is with the population explosion that happens during the summertime, we are resources. First of all, the hospitals are overstretched. They're filled to the capacity. We have a disaster waiting to happen if you do not allow healthcare workers to work in your hospitals. And you know, unfortunately, you know what, I grew up out here. I've been following this issue for about 10 years. Right now, 30% of the population can't pay their bills. There are 21 homeless families in the Mattituck district. So, but we have to look at the essential workers as resources that are necessary. And it's not just a moral issue, it's a smart issue. And believe me, you do not want to go to a hospital where there aren't enough nurses or people to take care of you. It's a disaster and people die. So another thing that has to be addressed is the population explosion. Who's going to take care of these people? Year round, it's bad enough. You know, you look at the map and it's all, I don't want to say it's greed because it's the free market, as Michael would say, but the free market isn't working, the widening gap. But I have a child. We have to think about the children too. I haven't heard anything mentioned about children. Why should children have to live in substandard places where there's mice? And there was a man who froze to death recently. I just want to say that all the details are very scary to me, but I just feel that I don't know how much longer we can go on at this rate.
Lisa, if I could just pick up on what you were saying about the children. One of the things that, one of the side effects of not having stabilized housing is there's this constant fear among the parents that, what am I going to do if the house, my landlord sells the house out from under me, which we saw happening in great numbers over the past year and a half.
That's-
Where am I going to go? What are we going to do? I have to leave my school? Do I have to leave my friends? We also we are seeing now a great migration of workers moving westward, where there is more affordable housing, to the point where my employer, Peconic Landing, we are now, with the labor shortages that we are experiencing, we are running a shuttle service from Riverhead to Greenport and back again at the end of the workday, in order to bring those workers back to us, because they haven't been able to live locally. So
Right.
what happens is, when you have destabilized housing, the children suffer from they hear what mom and dad are talking about, or they feel the stress that maybe the single parents are really feeling, and they feel that stress as well. So we hear you when you talk about the children.
Thank you, Pat. We have a question here from Aaron. Do any of our guests have links to images or literature or overviews of successful projects that have been done in the past?
Sure.
I don't want you to run to your bookmarks at this moment, but if you can come up with some, go ahead and send them to us. And Rona, I see you're saying,
I
go
have
ahead.
thoughts. If you want, I'll just do it, get them ready and send them to you.
Okay,
Does
and then we
that
can
seem
share. We'll share them from there. Thank you.
Does that,
That'll be fine.
that's an efficient use of time. It's going to take me 10 minutes, let's say. Is that a good use of time?
Not right at this moment,
Yeah, I know.
but later.
Sure,
Thank you.
I'd be happy to send some to you as well.
Great, thank you. So we have a question from Jean, and I'll give this to Pat. Could the old Capital One building on Main Road in Mattituck be made into apartments rather than a hotel, as is being proposed by the owner?
We did look at that. Unfortunately, and we approached the owner of that building. The price that owner was looking for made it cost prohibitive to then turn that building into affordable or workforce housing.
Okay, thank you. Well, while we wait for another question, I have another question, and Pat, you broached the topic. And that is, do we have a sense of the number of workers who commute into Southold town every day? The people who, such as at Peconic Landing, who come in by shuttle. Do we have a sense of that number? And
On a
Michael, do you
macro level,
have one
I don't.
for example, the South Fork, which has the famous trade parade?
Unfortunately, I don't know that anybody has that number. It's a relatively new concept, I think, that really became, I shouldn't say that, it exacerbated itself through the pandemic and the post-pandemic. So it may be just too new of a phenomenon right now to be able to give you any real numbers. But
Right.
I know from we're one of the largest employers on the North Fork. We have over 300 employees. It's increasing, the people coming west is increasing.
Right.
John,
That's just anecdotal.
Yes,
I
Mike.
kind of refer to that as the Disneyfication of the East End, where the park closes down in the evening and all the employees go home, and then they all have to come back in the morning, causing incredible traffic jams. And on the South Fork, and I know it is on Sound Avenue and through your main routes at all, it's horrendous. But the security guards and the cleaning crew stay overnight, but then all the employees leave. And our belief and research has shown that having more community apartments on the East End will actually help reduce the amount of traffic coming and going on our major arteries in the morning and the evenings when people are allowed to live here. And not only will it reduce traffic, but it will help local businesses because there'll be more people living to support them.
John, if I could add something.
Yes,
This is
Alfonso.
Al Martinez Fonts. I live in Cutchogue. to the lady, the nurse, I think it was Lisa, who spoke earlier. I served in the Department of Homeland Security as the Assistant Secretary for the private sector, nothing to do with housing. And I was visiting Santa Barbara, California when we met with their mayor and other senior officials. I asked them what was their biggest risk. And much to my surprise, this is probably 15 years ago, his answer was affordable housing. I was somewhat stumped and I said, exactly what do you mean? And he said, we do not have one fireman, one policeman, or one person working at our hospital who can afford to live in Santa Barbara. Think of Santa Barbara kind of as the East End, particularly the Hamptons, even more expensive certainly more expensive than the North Fork. And so, you know, it's interesting when we talk about when you reach those kinds of extremes, you know, who is going to put out the fire, who's going to be the first responder, and so on. It's just anecdote, not that we don't need to convince anyone on this call, but you know, this was very interesting to me a number of years ago.
John?
Thank you, Al.
John, it's Mark Levine. I have a question, if I might.
Go right ahead.
The state legislature last year passed new legislation, which was signed by the governor, which provides a 0.5%. It would now increase on sales of homes above a certain amount. Instead of the 2% tax, it would be 2.5%, with that 0.5% being made available for affordable housing within the 5 towns here. I'd be interested in the panelists' thoughts on a couple of things, whether or not they see that as a viable way of getting more affordable housing. Each of the projects we've heard today really seem to be going out on their own to find financing. There's no financing available by the town of Southold as opposed to Southampton and East Hampton. Southampton has a housing authority, for example, which provides some funding, and there are other sources within East Hampton that do the same thing. But Southold doesn't have any real source of money to provide developers looking to build affordable housing. So my fundamental question is, do the panelists see that as a possible way of increasing the amount of affordable housing? That's one part of the question. The second part is there any place to put it? Are we basically maxed out in terms of land such that there isn't really a lot of land available to build out of housing? Any
Can I
thoughts?
comment on that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it, you know, Thiel's proposal, and it comes from, you know, a really very, very well respected member of the legislature. That
Mhm.
0.5% would be terrific to have. It would, you know, because building affordable housing is about a patchwork of funding from many sources. So it would be terrific. I don't think Southold, and this is a big statement, I don't think Southold is in a position to put this together for the following reason. We do not have a housing plan. We have a wish list. You read the comprehensive plan and it talks about how desperate we are for affordable housing. And then it literally, we fight with the town as much as anything else. So in order to have a referendum, each town to get that 0.5% added has to have a separate referendum. In order to qualify to have the referendum, you have to have a housing plan. And I'll just give you a great example. Pat mentioned 6 different developments that have been proposed. Wouldn't it be great if somebody in the town put together all of these projects on a spreadsheet and looked at what level of AMI they are going to be renting to, so that there could be some coordination and we would know that we were hitting all the levels that needed the housing, not just some levels.
Right.
But that doesn't happen. And so we don't have a housing plan, and we'll never have a referendum without a housing plan, and we'll never pass a referendum unless people understand the desperation that exists. Because
I
it's not-
can't support what Rona says any greater than absolutely 1000% she is correct.
So
If there's no will, there needs to be a will by the town to want to make something happen. You know,
So,
like as she said, these are all wish lists. There is no structured plan. There is no will. I mean, to be honest with you, the Housing Commission is doing the work of a housing authority, and we're just lay people volunteers.
so Pat, if I
Yeah.
may, what you're basically, both of you are saying is, let's let that 0.5% of what is over the last 2 years, 3 years, given the amount of property being sold on the North Fork, that would amount to a substantial several $1 million, which would become available for affordable housing. And what I'm hearing you both say is, well, that's too bad, but there's no will to provide a plan to use that money.
Well,
That's
let me
sort
say
of-
this, Mark.
It's
As
not
you know,
Mm.
as you
Go
know,
ahead.
being on the commission, the money, the Community Preservation Fund has about $1 million
That's
in
right.
it now.
That's right.
And what we have as a commission, that's one of the jobs that we bear, is to help direct how those funds are spent.
Right.
We have, as a small little commission, we've dedicated ourselves to saying, any of these projects, these 6 projects that come forward, who need assistance with infrastructure or waste management or anything that's going to help them fund their projects, we've allocated certain funds from that fund to do that. And I won't give you
No, I'm
any
familiar
more
with it.
details than that. The extra 0.5%, we believe, even though it may not build a project, it can go into that same fund and
Yes.
continue to support the work that whatever the developer needs to help his or her project move forward. That's how we plan on using the money. Now,
Okay.
that is
I-
subject to the town board approval of our recommendation.
I don't want to prolong this. And Michael, I'll
Mark,
hold.
Mark, I just want to say this to you for a second, Mark,
Uh-huh.
is that we're not shrugging our shoulders at this 0.5%. We're saying a lot of work has got to go into it to make it pass.
Well,
That's all.
that's true. That's true whenever you want to build something new and different. And I suppose I'm a little surprised that the town isn't, because of the amount of need for affordable housing, jumping at the opportunity to provide a plan for building affordable housing. It's sort of mind-boggling that here you have some money that may be several $1 million, which
It's not
otherwise will
several
not be available.
Estimated to be below $1 million in
Right.
Southold.
Yeah.
It's a 0.5%.
Michael, you had your
But
hand up?
I have a fact sheet on this CPF community housing income, which I'll send to you, John, and you can distribute if you like. But Rona and Pat is absolutely right. There will be a referendum, hopefully this November, if each of the 5 East End towns are prepared with a housing plan. Southampton has developed one. They're tweaking it. East Hampton has developed one. Shelter Island, Riverhead's going through a master planning right now, so they have a housing plan that they will. But each of the 5 East End towns have to decide if they want this referendum to be on the November ballot. And in order to have it on the ballot, they have to have developed a plan, roll it out to the voters so that the voters can make an informed decision on it. So I think the first question is, at your next Southold Town Board, ask them where they are in terms of development of that plan, and are we going to be ready for November 2022
Well, that was
And just
to
for the
hold
sake-
that?
For the
Thank
sake
you.
of
George?
knowledge, this community, this CAC, we ask that, the commission asks that question almost every single meeting. Where are we at with the plan? Can we help with the plan? What do you need from us to move the plan forward? You know what kind of
Good for
answers
you.
we get?
nothing.
I'm afraid to guess. Oh,
Well, I mean, and the reason I raise is because I know that's the answer. And so the question is, if we're looking to build affordable housing on the North Fork, isn't this a real opportunity? And whether it's
is.
$500,000 or $1 million, Rona, if you have that going forward, you're going to have a stream of income forever and not have to guess at how or when you're going to get the money. That's all I'm
Nope.
saying.
okay.
Nope.
But I also will
Sorry.
tell you,
I'm going to interrupt here because
I'm
George,
done too.
George has been very patient. George, go ahead.
I just want to say that yesterday in a group email that went on all day Sunday with the head of all the civic associations on the North Fork, in the town of Southold, and Scott Russell told me that none of the East End towns were doing anything to put together an advisory committee between 7 and 15 people as the Fred Thiel law requires, and that it wasn't going to be on the referendum in any of the towns. And that's why Southold hadn't done anything yet, hadn't gotten around to doing anything about it yet. And
I
that
don't
may
think
be
that's
in,
true.
It's not true.
2023.
It's just not
I know
true.
it's not true, but that's what Scott Russell told me and all the heads of the civic associations yesterday in a group email.
Could we hear
Hey,
from the
John.
council member?
We have
John.
Greg Dorosky on the line.
Could we
and,
hear from Greg?
He's got his hand up. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, can you hear me all right, John?
Yes, yes.
All right, so interestingly enough, the town board has on the agenda tomorrow to discuss what we're going to do with this plan. I can tell you that I've personally met with Assemblyman Thiel to discuss a way forward with this. I think, and again, this is me speaking personally, I think there's a great opportunity offered by putting together an affordable housing plan to reflect the priorities of the community as we deliver affordable housing. I don't think there's any disputing that there is a real need for affordable housing in Southold Town. I do think we need to do some work, though, to determine what it looks like, and I think to Rona's point and the point that Pat's making, we really need to define how many units we need, what these units look like, where they're going to be located, what the AMIs are, and what mechanisms we want to use to deliver them.
And that's the housing plan.
That is exactly the
That's the
housing
plan.
plan.
Yeah.
And one of the great benefits of this affordable housing plan that's part of this Community Housing Act is that it doesn't necessarily require multifamily housing to solve this problem. It can be used to deliver grants to first-time home buyers. It can be used to provide grants for accessory apartments. It can be used to help with infrastructure for these larger projects. But I think the first thing we need to do is define what it is. We need a plan. We need to plan the work and then work the plan. And it's going to be necessary that we get the community together and determine what it's going to look like here. I think part of the issue is there's been a lack of leadership, and this problem has festered for too long. And now it's never good for solving a problem when you let something get to a crisis. And we need to put together a plan. I'm hopeful that we have time to get it on, so we can put it up for referendum. If we put some work in, I believe we can do it. We'll see if there's will on the board.
Thank you.
Good news.
And
Well, there's
Greg,
certainly support in the community.
If I just may add to and Greg's, the Housing Commission has put forth the invitation to let us help in this area, and it has never been picked up.
Well, I can tell you, Pat, that your assistance would be necessary in this plan. You're the experts that the board has appointed to help us. And again, speaking for myself, I think it would be necessary to engage, the Housing Advisory Commission, to engage the planning department, and, you know, potentially even a consultant to help us put this all together, because time is running out. And it's not just necessarily putting the plan together, but we need to hold a number of public hearings and public information gathering sessions. So we really put together a plan that reflects the priorities of the community. We can't leave it up to developers to come to us and say, hey, you know, what do you think about this? You know, because then they're left with seeing what, you know, the public reaction is. They're left without adequate guidance to say, you know what, we're serious. We want these in the Halo section, you know, section of the community, or else. Right now, there's kind of a lack of clarity, and you know, we need to define that, and that's where it's necessary for our elected officials and leaders to come forward and say, this is what we're going to do.
Council member, if I just might add, I think it makes for the developer's life a far more easier lift if they have an understanding of what it is that the town of Southold wants, because there is in fact a plan in place. And so it becomes critical to attract developers to understand what the town is looking for at the first instance. And that's why I think the plan is critical if we're going to ever have affordable housing.
Absolutely.
I
agree with you 100%.
I have a couple questions here from Jean. Are there other communities whose plans we can model ours on, so we have a starting place? And also, is there anything we can do as a civic to encourage the town?
Well, I would contact Kara back, and I can send you that information if you want, from the town of Southampton, who is the Director of Community Development and Housing. She has the draft Southampton Township. I would contact Tom Rule in East Hampton and see where he is at. And then I would perhaps contact someone in government in Riverhead to see where they're at for a housing plan, just to serve as a model for you that you could then take some pieces and parts out of and use for yourself.
If I could add just this, there are 5 towns, but it seems to me over time, we ought to be able to develop a plan in which the towns work cooperatively in terms of planning affordable housing that will serve all of the towns, not just each going off on their own. It seems to me doesn't make any sense at all.
Right.
Good point.
That's why we're called East End YIMBY, just
I
like
hear you.
there's Peconic Land Trust and, you know.
John,
we
John, just real quick to your question, an important function that the civics can serve here is really helping us engage the community and discussing the different forms of affordable housing. You know, one of the great benefits of this Community Housing Act is that it gives the towns a great amount of flexibility with distributing these funds in different areas. You know, maybe the community does not want, you know, a ton of big developments here. If we're looking to build hundreds of units, I can tell you my preference personally is not for a bunch of big, you know, big structures. You know, I think it's a little bit of a lot of different things that we need to do. Some of it's going to be accessory apartments. Some of it's going to be first time home buyer grants. Some of it's going to be, you know, multifamily. But, you know, we really need to engage the different hamlets to figure out what works in each hamlet. You know, each hamlet is different. What works in Mattituck may not work in East Marion, you know, and I think this is where we also, yes, we absolutely need to collaborate with the other local towns, but it also really does need to reflect the character of our community, each one of our hamlets. And, you know, it'll make it easier for everyone going forward. So there's not just this great amount of uncertainty where, you know, everyone comes out and battles it out over each individual project. You know, I think we can do a lot of good to solve this problem if we put together a plan and everyone will be happy with it.
I think we got a question.
No, not everyone will be happy. I can promise you that.
Lisa, we have a question again from Lisa.
Yes, what I wanted to say is that there are a lot of protections right now for tenants to be able to stay within their rentals, but I can assure you those will be lifted soon. And there is going to be an exodus of people that have nowhere to go. I mean, more than we've seen. So I'm curious to see what that's going to look like um, when all those protections are lifted and the houses are sold because the prices are at a great, right now my landlord just wants to sell. So where to go? Grumpy's trailer. I looked at it. It's already sold. So it is no laughing matter. No, it's a very urgent situation. Thank you for listening.
Absolutely. Thanks for the contribution. We have a question here from Glennis. Why does it have to be new housing? Shouldn't we be reusing existing infrastructure? Fair.
And not
Absolutely.
to tout the Community Housing Act again, we're allowed to use these funds to repurpose existing infrastructure, to build agricultural housing, to build housing for restaurants. It's again, this is where we need to come up with a plan and make it map to what the community wants.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Greg. We don't have any more questions in the chat. And in the absence of anybody raising their hand, perhaps we could start with Michael, and then we'll go to Rona, then we'll go to Pat. If you could just in a minute, what's your takeaway for us on this issue? Michael?
My takeaway is I'm really encouraged by the conversation tonight, and congratulations for hosting this and for having it, and for Councilperson Dorowski for coming on and speaking like that. I will tell you, we've identified the magic bullet for advocating for community housing, and that is take it off Facebook, take it out of the Love Lane Cafe, and bring it to local town and village board meetings and speak your mind, speak what you believe, speak what's important to you at town and village board meetings. Because if Greg is just sitting there and he only hearing from the haters and the people who don't want to hear about this and who want to fight this, that's where they leave not feeling like they have the support to make these good decisions. So please, you can watch videos from East Hampton Town Board, from Sag Harbor Village Board, from Southampton Town Board. Watch us soon on Shelter Island, and you'll see that showing up at these meetings and speaking in favor of community housing does have impact.
Thank you, Michael. Rona?
Yeah, I mean, we are meeting tomorrow in work session with the town board again, and want to answer any of their questions. They're concerned about income levels. They think that the income levels are too low. At least Scott does. And so we're going to have to try to satisfy that with some of the numbers that we've collected. And we look forward to having public hearings, because the best thing is for people to say what they think this doesn't do and what they'd like it to do. And it's not written in stone. It's always possible to make changes that are more suitable to what the people in the community want. This is a community effort. It isn't something that's superimposed on a community. So we really want to build a good project, and we hope people will be living in these units, these houses soon. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sure enough, Rona. Pat, the final word.
I have 2 points that I would like people to take home with them. One of which is, speaking about NIMBYism, we seem to have these public hearings that focus on this project, Project A, Project B, Project C. I think we have to have a more macro look at all of the housing projects.
Yep.
As I said, there are 6 of them in various stages of progression right now. I think the town would do a better service to the citizens if they looked at this not as Rona's project or Pulowski's project, but as a macro answer. How do we answer this for the needs of the town? The second thing is you can't get there if you don't have a plan. All we do is talk. We talk. We need a written, structured, formatted plan to sort of build a roadmap. Not that it's set in stone and can't be altered, but we need a roadmap to get to where we want to be.
Amen.
I think that's great, Pat.
I'm sorry, I'm very passionate about this.
You know what's funny? If
Clearly.
you get involved in affordable housing, it makes you passionate about it, because when you look at it up close, you see how great the need is, and it's scary that we're letting it happen, and people are fighting so hard against it.
Thank you.
What Pat said is perfectly right. It's 100% right.
Thank you.
And
I don't
yes,
want to be right. I want us to get ahead.
Yes, me too.
I think everybody on this Zoom agrees with you, Pat. Certainly in that
Thank you.
regard, we do need a plan. We need a plan to go forward. That's it. I want to say thank you to a couple of points here. Aaron on our board has been kind enough to. He's going to collate. He's going to receive all of the information that you presenters can provide us, that we can then send out to our members and post and so forth. So you all have my email address or contact information. We'll gather that up and then distribute it. To all the board members who helped me put this together, thank you very much. It has been, in my view, very successful in identifying the scope of the problem and a pathway to solution. Now, it's not a short or a simple path, but there is a path. And so thank you, Michael, thank you, Rona, thank you, Pat, and thank you, everyone else. This is a topic that's not going to go away. And so we're sure to visit it again. Thank you very much.
Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Be
And
well.
good night, everybody.
Well, everyone.
Night.
Thank you
Best
all.
wishes.
Have a great night.